All right, welcome to another Empowered by Iron podcast. We just want to thank you so much for tuning in this week. We have had quite the growth, I'd say, in listeners, and we know it's because you guys have been sharing and talking about it, and we really, really appreciate that. Today, we're going to break down the episode into 3 blocks. We're trying this new thing. Seemed to work great last time, so we're going to keep on with it. In our first block, we're going to answer some questions that we got, or a good question from one of our listeners regarding menstrual cycles and strength training. Then we're going to move into what is going on with Kristin and I's body recomp experiment. And then that's going to lead into block 3, where we're going to talk about this exciting project that we're going to be starting in May. So, hey, Kristin.
All right. Hey, guys. So Mary got a question specifically about how do you alter your training around your menstrual cycle, and specifically like when you have PMS and you have your period, right? Was that the question that you got?
Yeah, and how do you switch up your nutrition as well?
Right. So I'm going to break down for you guys the stages of your menstrual cycle and how that is going to affect how that could affect your nutrition and how your body utilizes energy, as well as what that means for your training in the gym. So this portion applies only to women who are not on oral contraceptives. So if you are on oral contraceptives, we'll cover that towards the end. But basically, so days 1 through 3 of your menstrual cycle. So your menstrual cycle starts day 1 is the day you get your period, right? So starts day 1. So days 1 through 13 is called the follicular phase. And then the menstrual phase is part of that, which is day 1 to whenever your period stops. So during this week, your energy is at its lowest in your cycle. So during that first week, the menstrual phase, and then as you move further into the follicular phase, like the last half of it is when your estrogen and testosterone really start to rise and you get an increase in energy. You have a high pain tolerance. And interestingly, there's been all sorts of studies, and I think this is so cool that there's studies finally being done on this, that there's studies that show an increase in force production and muscular endurance during this phase. Which is cool, right? So you're going to be able to...
So that means you can get stronger. Like that's your strongest point?
Yeah, the follicular phase is when you are going to really be able to make some good strength gains in your training.
So it's the F phase, the fuck it up phase.
Yeah, fuck some shit up in the gym, for sure. And so yeah, research found that in this particular phase, it resulted in higher increases in muscular strength compared to training during the last half of your cycle. But also in terms of your diet, this is when you have a increased insulin sensitivity, which is good. We want a high insulin sensitivity. So you're best able to utilize carbs for energy during this period of time. So basically what I'm saying is this magical 2 weeks, depending on the length of your cycle, where you're going to be feeling really good. You're going to be able to eat a bunch of carbs and you're going to be able to really fuck some shit up. Yeah.
Nice.
So, right. So moving on.
So now that you've broken that down,
yep,
we need to talk about how do we use the cycle in the most advantageous way towards our training, and how do we eat differently during our cycle?
Yeah. Okay. So personally, I don't really make any changes because it's just my training's just not set up that way. I know that there are women that definitely kind of, if you do your own programming, it's pretty easy to change your programming based on your menstrual cycle, but it's not something that my coach and I have ever approached, and I've never really made any changes during that period of time, but it would be, you know, basically I noticed during that period of time that I feel really strong. I feel really good. It's a really good time to, if you've been feeling a little bit fatigued, you can add in a little bit more carbs. Without having any negative effects of that. Your body's going to use those carbs pretty well. And so if you want to keep your calories the same, you could just change things and have more carbs and a little less fat during that period of time because your body favors that carb utilization. But basically, it's a time to get in a lot of volume and maybe go for a PR. But the PR really, when you really want to do that, is like this one magical day when you ovulate. That is when you are at your absolute strongest. Your estrogen and testosterone are at peak levels. You're at your absolute strongest. And it only happens one day. It's during ovulation. But so basically the days building up to ovulation. So the very middle of your cycle. And one thing to note, though, during ovulation that's really important is that the hormone changes that cause ovulation, they alter collagen metabolism, and that's really just because your estrogen is really high right then. And so that has an impact on tendon laxity, and it can result in tendon injury. So
you're at your strongest, but also your most vulnerable.
Yeah. And there's a bunch of research out there, and we'll link some articles for you guys that found that ACL tear rates are 4 to 8 times higher in women during ovulation. Just crazy.
That's a lot.
It is a lot. It is a lot. You know, as strength athletes, we're not super prone to ACL tear because we're not getting like impact. You know, if you play rugby or volleyball or basketball, then you're a little bit more prone to that. But as strength athletes, we're doing things that are pretty linear. So we're at a decreased risk of that anyway, but it is, you know, but it's not just the ACL. It's all your tendons are at a little bit, they're a little bit altered and a little bit impaired. So basically, you're at your strongest. Definitely go, if you want to go for a PR, this is the time to go for a PR. But just keep your form 100%.
There you
That's
go.
the bottom line. Yeah.
Okay, so now that we've broken that down and talked about you're strongest when you ovulate, and in the 2 weeks leading up, you're stronger.
Yep.
So now let's move into, okay, it's the week of your period, the one that most of us...
No, we're not there yet. We're not there yet. No, we still got 2 more weeks.
Oh, shit.
We're not there.
I forgot how much it sucks.
So days 15 through 28, or however long your cycle is, 23 to 32 days, that's the luteal phase. So the first 2 to 3 days of this phase are going to feel a lot like the ovulatory phase. But then your estrogen and testosterone start to decline as your body starts producing progesterone. So you're going to find that you maybe don't have as much endurance during this luteal phase. You don't have as much muscle endurance. So high reps are going to feel really hard. You might not be able to hit a max lift, and you just might feel worse. Your training just might feel worse compared to the first part of your cycle. Things might feel heavier than they should. We've all had times where we've gotten under the bar and gone, oh my gosh, 2 weeks ago, this felt really easy. And right now it feels really hard. And maybe that corresponds with your menstrual cycle, and maybe it doesn't, because sometimes that just happens. But this would be a really good time to take a deload sometime during this luteal phase. Would be an excellent time if you do a deload every 4 weeks, timing it up so that it's sometime within the last 2 weeks of your cycle would be an excellent time to do that. Interestingly, though, we burn 5 to 10% more calories during this phase. So if you are an athlete who is keeping your calories the same every day, and even if you're like, especially if you're at maintenance macros, you might feel like if you're training really hard, you might feel like adding in some extra food during this period of time. Some experts say not to do that. I don't think that those experts understand female strength athletes. I think that they're more on the fitness side of things and wanting women to stay really lean and diet. So I think that, it's an excellent time. If you're feeling a little bit run down, just add in a little bit more food if you want to. It's okay.
Look, I'm always down for eating more food.
So, always down to eat.
You don't have to tell me twice to eat more carbs.
Okay, but interestingly, you said that about carbs because during this period is when we have an impaired carbohydrate tolerance, which can lead to some really unstable blood sugar. Right. So you would be better off adding in a little bit more fat. Yeah, adding in a little bit more fat.
But peanut butter.
Exactly.
For you guys listening, I love peanut butter, but choose your fat source of your choice.
Right. Fat of choice. But so the second half of this luteal phase is when you might start to feel some PMS symptoms. And that's when we get like cravings for carbohydrate heavy comfort foods. And that is due to a drop in serotonin, and that causes us to crave carbs because it brings our serotonin levels back up, but it's really temporary. And like I said, we have an impaired carbohydrate tolerance during this period of time. So if you reach for like really sugary carbs, you can really get into a bad downward spiral with unstable blood sugar and craving more carbs and just get into a really bad cycle. So I caution you a little bit. I said eat more food if you need to, but I caution you, maybe if you go for fats, that's probably going to make you feel better overall.
But also don't eat the house.
Don't eat the house.
We're talking
if your husband makes you an apple pie, don't eat the whole thing.
Oh, Kristin, tell us how you know that.
I'm not like, I'm just saying, hypothetically, if he happened to make you an apple pie and it happened to be when you were PMSing and you accidentally ate the whole thing. I mean, that could happen. Don't do that. But also too, this is when due to hormone fluctuations, everyone knows this, you start increasing water storage a little bit. So, don't freak out if the scale's up a little bit during this period of time. The water weight, no big deal. But the combination, I think, of feeling a little moody and having an increase in water weight, plus maybe having some extra treats can really, really fuck with our heads when we step on the scale during this phase. So, just try to keep everything in check and don't freak out. Just know what to expect, I think, is the most important part during this phase. I always think, you guys know, I think knowledge is power. So the more you know about this, the more you understand your body, the more you can go, oh, okay, I'm just going to be cool. This is no big deal.
That's usually how I take that, because when I take oral contraceptives, so I don't have a normal, quote unquote, normal cycle. But when I do take the placebo and allow my body to do what it does, there's always the first day where I'm not hungry, the second day where I just want to eat like everything, and then the third day that I regret eating everything, and then by the fourth day I'm about back to normal. But I always, during that second day, like I'm eating everything, I know it's gonna be okay. By the fourth day I'll be back to where I was. It'll be fine. And my body just needs a little extra juice right now.
Exactly. Yeah. And so speaking of that, we'll come back to if you're not on oral contraceptives we'll come back to that in a second. But, so Mary, you're saying you just eat a little bit more food and kind of manage. Is that what you're saying?
Yeah. I mean, I can always tell. Well, I can obviously always tell because I'm in control of when I have a period or when I don't.
Right.
But I can always tell that it's going to happen because I just eat a little bit more. And it's nothing like I said, I don't eat the house, but if I'd finish all my food that I would normally eat in a day and I'm like, man, I'm craving X, whatever X is that night, cereal or peanut butter, I let myself go have some because I know that it's just my body wanting, like you said, a little bit of comfort, but a little bit more food. And the next day, yes, my weight will be up because yes, I'm holding water. And that's not a big deal. It took me, now to be fair, it took me a couple of years to get to the point where I'm like, okay, this is what happens. We are expecting this to happen. Don't freak the fuck out.
Right.
And then by the fourth day, you know, everything's kind of going back to normal. And then by the fifth, sixth, and seventh day, we are back on the train.
Yeah.
What do you do?
Well,
because you're not on oral contraceptives.
Correct. Yep, I'm not. So basically, like I said before, you know, if I want a little bit extra food, this is the time that I allow myself to have extra food. I'm pretty strict with my diet, and not in a restricting macros kind of way, but in a just I'm pretty strict. I try to hit about the same numbers every day and make sure that the numbers I'm hitting are the numbers that I need to be consuming in order to get stronger and a better athlete. But at any rate, so I allow myself to have a little bit extra food if I want to, though, like I said, I try not to go too crazy on the sweets and sugary foods, because for me, that really sends me into a horrible downward spiral of unstable blood sugar. And you know, I'll start overeating like every day and it gets a little bit out of control. So, but it is a nice time to just give me a little mental break from strict macros. Like, I still count my macros, but maybe if I've met my macros and I want a Rice Krispie treat or whatever, I'm going to have one. So it's a nice little mental break. I will say though that I don't do this if I'm trying to ensure that I make weight for a meet, or if I have a specific goal of weight loss, which I haven't had in a long time, but if I did, I stay true to my macros during that time. I don't go over. I try to just say to myself, okay, you know, this is what you're experiencing and this is why, and try to rationalize with myself, like, you don't need that food. It just sounds good, and try to find like other ways to take care of myself if I'm feeling like tired or moody, and maybe take a hot bath and read a book or go to bed early or whatever. So just a little bit of extra self-care really, I think, goes a long way.
And I think to combat, you know, we do want the comfort foods, but I think if you can figure out, let's say you're craving a donut, if you have something that's sugary, but not like that sugary in your house, something that you would normally eat, I try to keep my treats as though there's something I would normally consume. Like, I have cereal every day. So if I'm hungry and I want something sweet at the end of the day, I'm not going to go get ice cream. I'm going to eat my regular cereal, which is something stupid and fucking boring. Like, right, I have rice Chex Mix, or rice cereal, like the little rice squares.
Rice Chex?
Yeah, Rice Chex. I have Rice Chex, and then I have like Kix. So it's not even like cookie cereal or Oreo cereal. It's just really boring cereal. But and like you said, increasing your sleep. Your body is literally shedding from the inside out. You probably need some sleep, and especially for athletes who on top of that are still pushing their bodies to the limits. I'm not trying to dog on the normal female, but I know, like, for me, before I was doing strength training seriously, when my period would come, I was like, ugh, all right, well, I'm going to go lay down for the rest of the day and not do anything. But most of us as athletes still have training to do. We still go in and we still train, and we're still pushing our bodies while it's doing this other very energy consuming thing.
Yep.
So if you need to eat more, try to go to sleep a little bit earlier. That's a good way, I think, that I've found to deal with that. Just sleep a little bit more.
Definitely. And one thing actually, I used to have horrific like PMS cravings, like bad. Like, I would sit down and like polish off a pint of Ben & Jerry's and like a whole bag of potato chips. It was really bad. And
how's that different from now?
I don't do that at all now.
I'm just kidding.
I don't. But because here's the thing is that, and this is why I'm a little bit anal about tracking my macros, is because the longer that I have stuck to my maintenance macros, the less cravings that I have overall. and the less cravings that I have around my period. So that's been huge for me. Like I said,
I actually can second that. I second that.
Yeah.
I don't, like, as you'll hear in a bit, Kristin tracks. I don't, but, and you guys know this, but I eat kind of the similar things throughout the day, and I don't have intense cravings. I really just, at the end of the day, like, I really could use a little bit more cereal. Cool. Have a little bit more cereal.
And a lot of that has to do with what's happening in the hypothalamus and the pituitary gland when you are consistently well fed. Your body's not freaking out.
Right.
Things can stay pretty stable. And because ultimately that's what signals your hormones to release and do what they're supposed to do. So when things are stable in your body, your hormones and your endocrine glands are going to function a lot better, and you're going to have a lot less PMS issues. In general, I don't even think other than just feeling a little bit more hungry, I don't even think I have PMS anymore. And I used to have horrible PMS. So,
not saying this will cure it, but, eat your food. So if we could summarize it, if you feel like you need to eat more, but don't eat the house. And it's going to vary person to person. I personally would say, hey, if you fucking want some ice cream, please have yourself a bowl of ice cream.
Yes.
Like, we're not here to punish ourselves for what our bodies are doing naturally.
Right.
And in terms of training, if you have that type of relationship with your coach where you talk about these things, I have a female coach, so I feel a lot more comfortable talking to her about these things. But if you have a male coach, you may not. Or even if you have another female coach and you don't want to talk about these things, that's fine. Really, it shouldn't affect you all that much. I think the hardest part really is just getting to the gym.
I think it's just having an understanding of what your body is doing and what you're going through. It really is helpful when you're like, oh man, why do I feel like shit in the gym today? Like, what's going on? And then you can
I was able to lift this a week ago, and you're like, oh shit, well.
And then you realize like where you're at in your cycle and like, oh, okay, maybe I should give myself a break. Maybe I don't suck. Maybe that's just my body doing its normal healthy things.
Yeah.
Yeah.
But if you're on oral contraceptives, this doesn't count for anything. I mean, I get no fluctuations. I maybe have my period every 2 months whenever I decide it's time to have a period, but I don't go through these fluctuations. However, there is some research out there. It's definitely true that if you are on oral contraceptives, it will cause you to have reduced muscle gain. I'm not saying you won't be able to get strong. The research doesn't say you won't be able to get strong. It's just if you're trying to reach some type of elite level, it could hinder your muscle strength.
Yeah, so let's talk about that for a second. Let's talk about what the pill is. Yeah. So oral contraceptives, it's a pill that's a synthetic form of progesterone and estrogen. And it prevents ovulation by maintaining more consistent hormone levels. Most pills do fluctuate, have a little tiny fluctuation, but it's like a little, from week to week, but it's just very slight, not what your body would normally do.
My body couldn't handle those, actually. Interestingly, when I had the fluctuating one, I would bleed constantly.
Yeah, that can be a side effect.
So we had to put me on the regular one.
Right. So you don't get that peak.
Wait. Isn't it like, obviously I don't know as much as Kristin about this, and I take them. It doesn't just basically fake your body that you're pregnant?
Yeah.
Kind of, but not really.
I mean, kind of. Like, that's what they say, but when you actually like really research what's happening is not totally. I mean, it keeps your hormones more stable, which is what happens during pregnancy, but it doesn't really like mimic what's happening to your body during pregnancy.
Because if it did, you would start getting big boobs and a pseudo belly. Right?
Right. Although it can make your boobs grow a little, but yeah, so without that peak in estrogen that occurs during a normal menstrual cycle, when you're on oral contraceptives, it prevents that. It keeps them high all the time, but you don't get a spike in it. And so the ovary doesn't get the signal to release an egg. So that's basically how it works. But I want to be really careful here and let you guys know that the pill doesn't regulate your own hormones. It shuts off your own hormones and then says, because your body's going, oh, okay, well, I've got this other synthetic hormone. So it uses that and doesn't produce its own hormones. So when you get a period, when you're on oral contraceptives, so if you take the placebo pills that last week, then what's happening is it's not a real period. It's called a withdrawal period. And it's just what happens as a result of stopping those drugs. So just causes a period, but it's not like a real period. They call it a withdrawal bleed is what it's technically called. But because of stopping those hormones, you can start to get PMS symptoms. And it's a little bit different than traditional PMS if you were on oral contraceptives, but it does when you take those inactive pills, or even if you just don't take them. Some people just don't take them. They just don't take anything for a week. It's just a withdrawal from the synthetic hormones. So, but yeah, like Mary said, that studies have found that the use of combined oral contraceptives, so there are some oral contraceptives that are just progestin, which is the synthetic form of progesterone. They're just progestin only. And that's called the mini pill, if you've ever heard of that. But traditional oral contraceptives have both progestin and estrogen in them. So those are called a combined oral contraceptive. So women who take those do have significantly lower amounts of free testosterone, the circulating testosterone. And so that can lead to low energy, undesirable weight changes, decreased sexual desire, and impaired muscle growth and strength. So if you are experiencing symptoms like that are bothersome and uncomfortable, talk to your doctor about it, I guess, would be my advice. But when Mary and I talked about this, for a lot of people, the benefits of oral contraceptives outweigh the strength gain issue and the muscle gain issue.
Yeah, so, like I told Kristin, going to be an Olympic athlete, I can believe in my heart of hearts that someday it'll happen. It's not going to happen. And right now in my life, the risk of getting pregnant far outweighs the risk of not being a certain level of strength. So that's where I'm at. Like it's just kind of where you are in life. And if you truly do have the potential to become something big in your sport, you really might want to consider using contraceptives versus not. But if you're like me and in my situation, like I'm about to be 26, we're buying a house, we're kind of still new in this whole real adulting life, and I am not ready. That's a whole nother podcast. I'm not ready to have a kid. And
right,
even if that means I just get a little less strong than what I would normally, whatever. That's a great attitude to have. Whatever. Okay, so speaking of strength, let's move into our second segment. So moving into the second segment, we're going to be talking about our body recomp experiments that both Kristin and I have been conducting for you for quite a few months now and me for just a couple. Is that correct?
Yep.
So we wanted to give you an update, and Kristin went through some of her old photos, which if you're part of our Facebook group page, I might try to bully her into posting them.
Oh no.
But
you'd have to do a lot of
really
bullying.
Important.
Okay.
Maybe.
Yeah. So I guess I got to back up several years here, like maybe 20.
All right, guys, go grab a snack. We're going to pause really quick. Come back.
No.
All right, you back?
Quick.
All right, we're ready.
This will be quick. Basically, when I was in my late teens and early 20s, I was really interested in like strength training, but I didn't know anything about strength training and I didn't know how to find strength training. And so I read like Muscle and Fitness, Hers, and Oxygen magazine, and everything was all about, like bodybuilding and whatever. And that's kind of how I got into, really got into just hanging out in gyms and strength training and whatever. And everything in those magazines that at the time, I haven't read them in so many years. I don't know what's in them anymore, so I can't speak to that. But at the time, everything that was in them was all about basically dieting and strength training. And so for a long time, I just kind of thought that you just would be at a caloric deficit and get strong, and like didn't really understand how the body worked. It was
fucking magic. You didn't have to eat, and you just put on muscle.
This is obviously before my 10 years in college to
Young,
become
naive Kristin.
What I am. Yeah. So anyway, now I have a much better understanding of the human body, and have the credentials to actually know how things work. I'm like, that's not right. So about, I guess it was 4 years ago. So I went through a period where I was basically either crushing it in the gym and at a caloric deficit. When I say crushing it, probably really just training really hard, because I probably wasn't crushing it. Just training really hard and at probably a caloric deficit. And then I would go like hard at that for a long time. And then I would just like something would happen in life and I'd get busy, whatever. And I would stop training and stop, eat whatever I wanted and gain weight. And so I went through this cycle for years and years and years until finally I, got a little bit more serious about strength training and then eventually got into CrossFit. So at any rate, I guess it was 4 years ago, I did a challenge where I actually, for the first time, was eating at maintenance macros or above. And I didn't fully calculate my macro. I didn't like weigh and measure everything, but most things. So I was pretty close, but not as rigid as I am now. And it was like 3 months. It was the first time I had ever like trained hard and eaten at least maintenance, at least, and probably a little surplus. I can't quite exactly remember what I was at. So I sent Mary these pictures that I found on my phone, and I had like some serious back gains, I would say. It was the biggest.
Oh, they were huge. They were like literal wings that you have grown.
I grew wings over a 3-month period. And I did body fat testing before and after. I used BodPod is what I used, if you've ever heard of that. It's an air displacement test as opposed to like a water displacement test. It's supposed to be pretty accurate. So I just, right before Mary and I hopped on to do this episode with you guys, I found the results from it, and they're literally identical. Like they are identical, over 3 months of eating what my body needed. And so I think the thing that everyone's afraid of.
But you got stronger. Like you got back gains.
I got stronger. I didn't lose body fat. I was like 20% body fat. I didn't need to drop any body fat. It was fine. In my head, I needed to drop body fat. And I thought that I might do that while concurrently getting stronger. And I remember being disappointed when I got these results. Instead of looking at them now, years later, I'm like, that's incredible. I was probably eating 1,000 more calories a day. I mean, I think I was severely under eating to actually eating what my body needed. And my body composition didn't change. What happened was I got hella stronger. But what did I do? I freaked out because I thought I looked fatter. I didn't. I mean, maybe my belly looks a tiny bit bloated in the pictures. I don't know.
Could have been from the extra carbs, as we know. Carbs retain water.
Exactly. And yeah, basically, it's shocking to me when I think back to, I remember how I felt about that whole period of time. And even though I was crushing it in the gym, I remember going, well, that was fun, but I want to be skinny or something stupid. And so it's so shocking to me that now, like, I feel like that is our mission, is to teach women how to do this and support them through the process of being,
to teach you listening right now.
Yes, to teach you how to eat to support your body and get strong. And I think everyone is so afraid that they're going to get fat when they do this, right? That's like everyone, if I'm being honest, that's everyone, that all my nutrition clients, that's all their fear is that they're getting fat when they start this process. And it's, if you do it wrong, it can happen. But if you do it right,
but
it's
you have
awesome.
to keep in mind what you're doing is not a bulk. This isn't a 12-week bulk where you are eating like thousands extra calories a day that you really don't need. This is just eating in a slight surplus. So that happened 4 years ago, and then you went through this period of overeating, undereating, but never really making significant gains until when? So over a year ago, you had your surgeries, which wreaked havoc on your body.
Yeah.
And let's talk about what happened in July.
I don't know what happened in July. I don't remember what happened in July. What happened in July, Mary?
You're so funny. You told me this yesterday. That you were trying to cut.
Oh, yeah.
Surgeries.
This is so stupid. This is one reason why there are periods of time in my life where I can't be my own nutrition coach. And I was trying to be my own nutrition coach at this point in time. And I probably should have not been in charge of my own nutrition because I made a really stupid decision. And so I was just all cleared after I had bilateral mastectomy and reconstruction and was cleared to do whatever I wanted to do. And I had to gain 10 pounds of fat for my reconstruction surgery, which was really scary. I'm not taught 10 pounds of muscle. Great. No, I had to gain 10 pounds of actual fat because they had to use it to put other places.
Eating shit food for weeks.
It was really fun. By the way, it did not take me as long to put on 10 pounds of fat as I thought it would because I wasn't training. So I was like, well, I could eat like what I was eating before and more. Yeah, no, this happened really quickly. And anyway, so then I thought, oh, well, okay. Now I was cleared to my doctor's like, okay, if you feel like you need to lose weight, you can. I don't think you do, but you're fine to now after I was all healed from my surgeries. And so I was uncomfortable with how my body looked, of course, because I hadn't trained in a very long time. And so I decided I was going to try to come back from surgery, get strong. I lost a significant amount of strength. I'm like, I'm gonna get all my strength back and then some. And I put myself at a severe caloric deficit. So that was really dumb.
While your body was still recovering. Like, you had been cleared, but like, that was a lot going on in there.
Yeah. My body was going through a lot.
Your poor body.
I also had a lot of hormonal issues come up because of the mastectomy and then also just the stress on my body. So, it was not good. So I fought that for a little while. And then finally, and I'm not sure when this was, but I just went, fuck it. Like, I feel like shit. I'm not making progress. I'm barely getting stronger. My strength was not coming back as quickly as I thought it would. And so I guess maybe it was like September or October. I finally was like, fuck it. I'm just going to eat. And I calculated out what my total daily energy expenditure was. And based on how much I was training, and just started eating. And at that point, I felt so horrible that I was like, I don't care if I'm a 63, a 69, or a 75, or fuck, maybe I'll go into the 90s. I don't give a shit.
Hell yeah.
I don't want to. I was like, I don't want to feel this way. And so
it was almost like a rock bottom.
It absolutely was rock bottom. And looking back, I was not able to be objective enough with myself to be my own nutrition coach at the time. So I'm glad, something gave and I went, this isn't right. So anyway, so since then I've just been eating at like maintenance or like above. I like to call what?
Or like you like to call what?
Eating for strength. I've been eating for strength at my maintenance macros. Yeah, or a little above if I wanted to.
Or in a whole pie.
But or a whole pie. I did do that like a couple times. So even nutrition coaches fuck up. It's fine. It's no big deal.
But I wouldn't even call that a fuck up. I would just call that life. Like, hell yeah. My husband's going to make me a pie. I'm going to eat that whole thing. And no, I'm not sharing. Get away from me.
Yeah. Yeah. Basically, that's what happened. So yeah, since then, my strength has increased like exponentially.
It's been insane to watch, I have to say.
and my body weight's up. I will say my body weight is up. I am at almost the heaviest I have ever been. But when I was this heavy, I didn't have near this amount of muscle mass. So my body fat is a lot lower. But that can really mess with a person when they go, oh my gosh, I remember being this weight before and I was, a fatty or whatever,
Yeah. You just hated yourself.
Exactly.
You remember that number because you hated yourself.
I remember that number because I was like, what have I done to myself? Yeah. But
I have to say from an objective standpoint, I mean, I see you every day, and every day I'm like, this girl, she looks lean, she looks thick as fuck. I mean, you look like an athlete, but you're not following all these diet protocols to make you look like a quote-unquote athlete. When you told me how much you weighed, I was like, there's no way in hell you weigh that much because of how you look. But it's all muscle. That's what I was.
Yeah, and that's the surprising thing when you start eating for strength. Amazing things start to happen. Now, I'm not going to say that it's 100% easy. If you follow Mary's vlog, she has talked about, you've seen or follow her on Instagram, you've seen her struggles with this, where there are days where you're like, wow, I feel like maybe I'm getting really fat and I'm just going to get really fat and I'm going to turn into like this big blob who can't even do anything. And there are days when it feels like that's going to happen, but then it doesn't ever happen. It's, you might look in the mirror and feel a little bloated or fluffy one day, and you might feel bloated or fluffy for like a week. And then all of a sudden the next week, it's like, where did that fluff go? And where did these muscles come from?
Yeah. And
it's pretty incredible. All the while you're gaining strength and feeling awesome in the gym. And for me, that's the thing is, the thing that motivates me the most in life in general is feeling good, So I feel awesome in the gym. I feel really strong. I've definitely got my strength back and have been setting some lifetime PRs. That they're not huge lifetime PRs, but they're lifetime PRs. And so that for me was this wake up call of, oh my gosh, why don't more people know about this? Why aren't women taught how to eat this way? It's shocking to me. We're just not taught how to eat this way.
I'll tell you why. So when I was 14, 15, I couldn't drive yet. I used to go with one of my friends and her mom to the gym, and all we would do was cardio because we wanted to lose weight. I was like 15. I did not need to lose weight. I was a tri-sport athlete. I was very active. I had, until that point, I had never thought of food ever except for when I was hungry. Because, once you've gone through some type of disordered eating, food tends to consume you.
Right.
But until that point, I just ate. I mean, I used to walk to basketball practice, and on the way home, I'd get one of those giant ass Slurpees. I didn't think twice because, come on, it's a Slurpee. Everyone loves a Slurpee. So I went through that, and then I learned that if I stopped eating, lunch, I lost weight, and I started to get the positive feedback, as you do, from the opposite gender, and guys are interested in me now because I looked a certain way, which I'm convinced if I had just stuck with being a tri-sport athlete and eaten, it would have been fine anyway. But, it's that positive reinforcement. So I went up and down with really severely restricting and binging from the time I was about 15 to the time I was about 23, 24, so fairly recently. And it took me until I was about 23, as most of you know, to finally decide that this was enough. I felt crappy enough. I'm just going to let myself eat. And this wasn't even the start of the body recomp. This was just me trying to get a better relationship with food. And so I just let myself have no limits, which was hard because I still wanted to limit myself in my brain. But I started to let myself have no limits. I'd eat what I want, when I want. And over time, I realized my body started to have a pattern of what it wanted, when it wanted it. And I just fell into a natural rhythm. And then I think it was last April, I decided that I wanted to be a 63. So I started slightly cutting my food, which turned into more and more. I was never like super uncomfortable. I just would skip breakfast. So I wouldn't eat till like 11 or noon. And then Kristin started her thing in September, October. I had a meet and I confessed to her that I'd been in a caloric deficit for forever. She said, well, what the hell are you doing, you moron? In a very nice way. She's like, Mary, stop it.
I was the only reason really I was shocked is because if you want to be in a caloric deficit to, if you want to lose weight and get into a lower weight class or whatever, like fine, but your goal was to get stronger. And I knew that
Yes.
was your goal, and you had specific numbers that you wanted to hit, and you weren't going to hit them at a caloric deficit. And so that was the shocking part to me.
Right. And I think a lot of women deal with that too. I mean, they have numbers that they want to hit and goals they want to meet, but they also have this image of what they think an athlete should be like.
Yes.
So if they hit those numbers and they look like this athlete that they have in their mind, then they have succeeded.
Yes.
But we don't recognize that that's what it is. It's that we have to be one and the other. We say one, but if we are not one without the other, are we anything? And I think that's where I was at. And so,
but also let's just talk about some of those athletes that people might really look up to and go, oh, well, that person is a 63 and they are ripped and they are an elite athlete. And I gotta tell you, they didn't become an elite athlete by restricting their calories. I mean, yeah, at some point they may have cut, a couple of times, or they might cut for meats or whatever. But, but you're not seeing the years of, hopefully, of them eating enough food to get really strong.
Yeah, and I'm sure that they've had their battles too, but they've come to the recognition that if I want to be great in my sport, I need to learn how to feel my body. And then they become very, very focused about what to eat, when to eat it, how to best fuel their bodies for what they need it to do. And most of us don't have that issue. We train, we're athletes, but we also have other things that are our full-time job. So once I started this whole thing, I started at like 66, and I will say something that I know I struggled with stepping on the scale. Once I switched it from pounds to kilos on our home scale, it's like all of a sudden they don't mean anything. What's a kilo? I don't know. I don't even know what a 67, what a 68 kilo is.
Right.
So that if any of you are struggling with that, maybe try switching your scale, because I still don't know what those numbers are, and I don't intend to learn. I just
right, because the biggest thing is that you just want to stay within your weight class.
Yeah, and I don't have any emotions associated with a 68 kilo or 72 kilos. Yep. I just know that they're kilos. But I have emotions with 157 pounds and 135 pounds.
Right.
So I stepped on the scale, started the first day, I was like 66.4, and I started eating better. I started focusing on pre and post training. How can I move my fats throughout the day? I need to start eating earlier. Like I need to start eating what I would consider breakfast. I'm not really hungry when I wake up, so I eat like breakfast at 8 or 9, which is, still early enough, but I would normally push that off until like 11 or until I was crumbling in hunger. So I've been doing that for the past couple months, and my weight has gone from 66.4 to like 67.8 to 68.3 now. I've moved up a bit, but I've gotten stronger. I've leaned out a little bit, and I feel great. I'm never hungry. I'm never thinking about food. I wait until I'm hungry, and then I eat, and then I forget about it. And it's this, for someone who has struggled with food for so long, it is such a freeing thing for me to not even worry about it. I can think about other things. I can think about the podcast. I can think about my home life. I can think about work. I can think about anything but food. And I'm like, I'm not even freaking out about it.
That's so awesome.
Because
I was there towards the end of your struggles with this, like with your eating disorder and
I mean, you tried to help me. You tried to be my nutrition coach for like ever. And I was like, oh, I keep fucking up. And you were like, you have a little bit of an issue. But I learned. That's also why I don't count, because if I try to count, it's the end of the world. I can't have that type of control based on my history.
Right.
And yeah, so things have been going super well. But like Kristin said, you do have days that you feel really fat, and you look at the mirror and you're like, what am I doing? I'm going to start a cut tomorrow. And then tomorrow comes and you're like, no, don't do that. You're an idiot. You do have this up and down, but overall you learn how to love your body, and you learn how to love what your body does. And then you go eat food. And that's it. It's beautiful.
Well, and here's the really cool thing is like watching you go through this whole process, because I know your struggles. I know how bad things have been in terms of like restricting and binging and all of this. And like now I just watch you're killing it in the gym. And here's the thing is that I think that your body is finally starting to look like what you were chasing all of those years.
Yeah.
Is finally starting to look like that. Like you look like an athlete. Like you have put on some muscle, and you know, you're like in smaller size clothes, but you've put on muscle and you are crushing it. And it's awesome.
Thank you.
You look awesome. Not that it's about how you look, but I know that that's so many people's fear, is that they're not going to like what they see in the mirror, when I think the exact opposite. Once you stop focusing on that, start focusing on fueling your body and praising it for what it can do, is when that change actually starts to occur and you start to get that look that you're after.
Yeah. And it's crazy. I don't want to paint the perfect picture and say that I just love myself every day and I'm beautiful and I just feel so great, because there are days that you're like, why do I have X fat here? Why can't I look like this person? And you recognize I'm not that person. And that's more of the mental side of it too. But I think getting rid of the restrictive food part, where you feel like you have to eat a certain number of calories so you can look a certain way, and you let go of the food part, you're more able to focus on your mental aspects of how you have that relationship with your body and relationship with food, and trying to change that. And I think, unless you have something else to add, Kristin, this is a wonderful segue into an amazing project that Empowered by Iron is doing just for you listening right now. We're doing this for you, and we are so fucking excited about it. So Kristin and I have been talking a lot about how amazing this Recomp is and how amazing fueling yourself is. And we just can't shut up about it. It's actually quite annoying how much we talk about it.
It's so like, we're so passionate about it because
it's affected both of our lives so greatly.
We have been through some, like you guys heard, some rough times, and no one's talking about how to do this stuff. And I've watched clients go through this. I've had clients that, you know, it's heartbreaking to see them beat themselves up over, you know, wanting to look a certain way. And then when we change the focus, like magic happens, and it's amazing. And it's made me incredibly passionate about getting this information out there, which is what we're going to do.
So Kristin and I together are designing basically a 16-week Teach Yourself How to Body Recomp book. It's a guide. It is us teaching you how to do what we've done. Now, if you want more information on like pricing and whatnot, because it's not going to be free, but you will have complete access to the two of us. You can go join our Facebook group page, Women in Strength Athlete Resource, to get that information when we have that available. But basically what it's going to be is it's going to be a 16-week group where you and 49 of your closest or soon to be closest nutrition friends all come together and we work through how to fuel your body for your strength sport. Now, obviously, Kristin and I do things very differently. So we will have something that involves macro counting to teach you how to calculate your macros for your journey into this new strength side of your nutrition world. And then we'll also have a intuitive eating part where you will do more of what I do and how I can teach you how I've done what I've done and get you to this point. It's going to be 16 weeks. And then at the end of it, we're going to publish it in a book.
Yep.
So it'll be a book available on Amazon. And it's going to rock your world. We're so excited for it to come out. It is so amazing. The group will be starting sometime in May. So probably like the second week of May. We will release more of those details, as I said, first in our Facebook group page, and then we'll announce it publicly probably beginning of May. So if you want information first, you want the first to hear about it, go join our Facebook group page. And if you want first access to it, go join our Patreon. If you guys don't know, we do a Patreon, which is a monthly donation towards Empowered by Iron and our cause so that we can keep doing things like this for you. We have a new mission now, and that's to change your relationship with food and strength and your body. And we're so excited to do it. Aren't you, Kristin?
I am absolutely pumped. I've never been more excited for a project. And it's just because I think that there's an incredible need for women to have this information, and it's life-changing information. And I just want everyone to know about it. And I want everyone to have such a good relationship with food and training. It's just so needed.
Well, it's changed. I mean, for the years that we spent trying to do it the way that makes the most money for all the companies, which is dieting, right, didn't work for us. And now we're doing this thing that no one's talking about.
Yep.
And
everything that you see on social media is about like, oh, I'm cutting, or oh, I'm bulking, or oh, like, what about the in between? There's something in between. And that's where I think where the magic happens. And it's so much less stressful. That's the thing, is like, it doesn't have to be stressful. It's just eat and train and feel good and enjoy life and be happy and get strong and hit your goals. And it's just amazing. I want everyone to know about this. I want everyone to know how to do this.
Yes, and that's why it's a guide. That's why we're not saying we're offering monthly coaching. We're not saying we are going to get you through this for $200 a month. It's going to be a book, and it's going to be easily accessible by everyone because everyone needs to know this.
Yeah, and we're going to teach you how to coach yourself through this. If you're part of the Facebook group page, we'll guide you through it. We're there with you 24/7. But ultimately, the ultimate goal is for you to understand this process so well that you can do it on your own.
Because that's the point.
We want you to be able to do this and then tell your friends about it and have your friends teach themselves how to do it as well. Until the entire female strength community knows how to eat to support their goals.
There we go. And that is the ultimate goal for us. So if you're not a part of our Facebook group page, go join that, where you can get second access to all of this information. Women in Strength Athlete Resource. I'll have it linked in the description below. If you want first information on this, go join our Patreon. where we'll be talking about some exciting things like possibly shirt designs with our Patreon. So
yes,
go join Patreon. If not, definitely go join our Facebook group page for this information before we release it publicly.
And Patreon is patreon.com/empoweredbyiron.
Yep. And that'll be linked in the description below. Until next time, we'll talk to you then. Bye.
Bye.